I'd like to welcome you to the Tuesday, June 5th, 2018 City Council work-study session. And we'll start with a roll call, please.
Mayor Jim Lane.
Present.
Vice Mayor Guy Phillips.
Present.
Council members Suzanne Clapp. Here. Virginia Cordy.
Here.
Kathy Littlefield.
Here.
Linda Milhaven.
Here.
And David Smith.
Present.
City Manager Jim Thompson.
Here.
City Attorney Bruce Washburn.
Here.
City Treasurer Jeff Nichols.
Here.
City Auditor Sharon Walker. Here. And the clerk is present.
Thank you. This is not a regular council meeting, but I'd like to at least note that this is the first meeting that our new Vice Mayor, formerly Councilman Guy Phillips is our Vice Mayor. It's our first meeting, but it's nice to have you starting at this time. So welcome into that position. We have first order of business, as this is a work order, or rather a work study. We have a presentation. Patricia Rippey, FEMA Senior Floor Plan Management Specialist, will be presenting the FEMA Community Rating Systems Class 5 Community Recognition Award. There's a mouthful. To Scottsdale for exceptional floodplain management practices, and which resulted in a 25% insurance premium savings for 8,000 of our Scottsdale residents who are policyholders effective May 1st. And for that, we're very honored to be able to receive this. And Patricia, if you'd like to...
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to represent FEMA today in thanking and recognizing the City of Scottsdale in your ongoing efforts to provide an exemplary floodplain management program to your citizens. The Community Rating System is a voluntary incentive program that recognizes and encourages community floodplain management activities. It provides a reduction in flood insurance premium rates for property owners in communities that implement activities that go above and beyond the minimum required of the National Flood Insurance Program. These reduced rates reflect the reduced flood risk resulting from the actions that the community is taking. Communities receive credits for implementing floodplain management activities. They submit documentation to the National Flood Insurance Program, and according to the types and the numbers of credits that are received, they are assigned a community rating system class. There are 10 classes in the system. A community rated as a Class 10 community is meeting the minimum requirements of the National Flood Insurance Program. And in those communities, property owners pay a standard flood insurance rate with no deduction. A community rated as a Class 5 has accumulated between 2,500 and 3,000 points or credits. This means that a property in a high-risk flood zone in Scottsdale receives a 25% reduction in flood insurance premium rates. The City of Scottsdale has just over 8,000 flood insurance policies with about a little under $4 million in premiums. The average premium of a flood insurance policy in the City of Scottsdale is about $493, $490. The Class 5 rating represents a total savings of about $1.1 million in flood insurance premiums for the city, and an average savings of about $150 per policy for those structures and properties located within a high-risk flood zone. The City of Scottsdale has undertaken a number of activities and actions that have led to this success. I'm going to enumerate a couple of them. Adopting and regulating development in areas that are not included on the flood insurance rate maps that exceed the minimum mapping standards. Enforcing regulations that require development limitations, free board for new and substantially improved construction, foundation protection, local drainage protection, and the adoption and enforcement of building codes. Scottsdale's preserved about 49% of the high-risk areas as open space, and credit is also provided for regulations and incentives that minimize development in this high-risk flood zone. Enforcing regulations for stormwater management, soil and erosion control, and water quality are also recognized. The city's watershed master planning efforts are exemplary. The city also provides public outreach, which includes a letter to the realtors, an annual mailing to all properties located in the high-risk flood zone, participates in a trade show, and provides citizens with flood zone information. City staff offer one-on-one advice regarding property protection and make site visits before providing that advice. The city's acquired and relocated 20 buildings from the high-risk flood zone. And the adoption and implementation of the Maricopa County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan, another mouthful, Mayor, which formulates 5-year plans to reduce flood damage through construction of flood control projects, floodplain identification or mapping, and planning programs throughout the county. The Class 5 ranking of Scottsdale brings the city into the top 4 communities in Arizona and the top city in Arizona out of the 26 communities that participate in the community rating system in the state. FEMA Region 9 is pleased by the good work being conducted by the City of Scottsdale. This rating reflects the city's dedication to excellence in floodplain management. The city and its residents have taken important steps to enhance public safety, reduce damages to property and public infrastructure, avoid disruption and losses, and reduce human suffering and protects the environments. So congratulations for a job well done, Scottsdale. Mayor, could you please come up?
We'll come up and we'll take that picture, but Ashley Couch, our stormwater manager and extraordinary, who he and his staff are instrumental in providing this type of additional service and savings to our citizens. Every time the city is mentioned, we're talking about the individual homeowners whose policies are affected by this reduction. So we're grateful for all the work that the city and FEMA has done in order to get to this point. Thank you so very much for that.
Congratulations.
Thank you again, and very good work. It's long, I know those are tedious and tough tasks, but they are well worth it for our community, so, from a safety as well as savings standpoint. You know, I did start to mention that this is a work-study session versus a council meeting, and just so that it is perfectly clear, and the reason we're down here on the floor is because this is a conversational type of arrangement so that we can have interaction with the staff on a more specific and direct level rather than sometimes adhering to the strict protocols of the Roberts rules with our regular meetings. So it's a little bit more informal and thus I think more productive and sometimes more productive. But provides a less formal settings for the mayor and the council to discuss the specific topics at length with each other and the staff, and work study sessions provides the opportunity for staff to receive direction from the council and for the public to observe these discussions. Public comment in work-study sessions is a little bit different than it is for a regular council meeting. In most recent years, but for quite some time now, there is an ability in these sessions for the public to have some comments on it. It's restricted to 5 3-minute comment attendees or individuals that would like to comment on the proceedings here. So that is, and if you'd like to make any such comment, we do have cards for that purpose over here. The city clerk over here to my right over ahead for that purpose, and there's a yellow card. I also believe if you'd like to give us some written comments, it can be also read by the council members. So our one and only item of business on tonight's work-study session is the downtown plan update of 1GP 2018 and 1TA 2018. And our presenter here tonight, if she would move to the table, is Erin Perot, our long-range planning manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm also here with Brad Carr, Principal Planner in Current Planning, who will cover the companion zoning case text amendment.
Very good. Welcome, Erin and Brad. Thank you. So if you'd like, go ahead and proceed.
So with regard to the downtown plan, we currently operate under the 2009 downtown plan, which was an update, a 25-year update to a 1984 plan that we've had for downtown. The existing plan consists of 6 chapters that you can see on the left of the slide there. In terms of the plan update, what we do with any long-range plan is do a plan assessment. So about halfway through the plan's shelf life, which is 10 years, we assess for relevance and viability of that plan. We also look for any implementation that's been completed under that plan, and we also look to see what's been adopted since the plan was adopted itself for any new policies or initiatives that might need to be incorporated into that plan. So part of that process started in 2016 with the long-range planning team doing an existing condition study of downtown, doing that implementation review I mentioned. We've also been working to not only assess the 2009 plan, but also provide updated plan content for you to consider, working with a number of different departments throughout the city, and you can see those listed in the middle of the slide. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we also look to see any content that has been adopted since 2009, and you'll see a number of plans that Council has adopted since then, or at least has initiated and heard, including the Downtown 2.0 study that you heard last fall in November. Some of that content we also have considered including in an updated plan for your consideration, which you have in your packet today. The good news item coming out of the implementation from 2009 is the vast majority of the things we wanted to implement under the plan have been completed to date. So we need to, with the plan update, assess what we want to do for implementation for the next 10 years. In terms of public outreach, Council initiated this process in January of this year. We've met with a number of boards and commissions to get input from them with regard to the updated draft plan, and we've also held open houses with the community. We also had direct presentations and discussions with all of the different community groups you see listed on the right side of the slide, as well as meeting with individual property owners and downtown stakeholders as requested. So I'm going to get into some of the updated plan content. The majority of time I'll spend on land use because that's where we're proposing the largest changes for your consideration. First off, we're not proposing to change any of the types of land uses that you can have in downtown or the locations of those land uses, so those will remain the same. In terms of downtown districts, the existing plan, and you can see that in the map on the left, has urban neighborhoods, which no one refers to them as. They refer to them as districts, so we will go back to that nomenclature of downtown districts. In addition, right now we have 6 downtown urban neighborhoods identified. However, since 2009, tourism, not only the city tourism department, but also Experience Scottsdale has identified a number of downtown districts that they use in their marketing and promotions, which you can see on the left of this new slide. What we've tried to do is align the proposed downtown districts with those marketing and promotion materials, so everyone's talking about the same districts, talking about the same boundaries, with the exception of 2 areas. The first one being the Arizona Canal. In terms of the tourism, marketing, and promotions, they talk about Southbridge on the south side of the canal. They refer to the waterfront on the north side of the canal. From a planning and urban design standpoint, we have kept the full canal length within the downtown boundary as one district, as from a planning and design standpoint, it really operates that way. So that's one departure from the tourism documents. The second one is the tourism documents do not cover this area in green, just west of the Goldwater Boulevard curve. That area is our mid-century modern garden apartments, so we have designated it as a garden district so as not to leave them out of the plan. The next piece is existing development types. What you see on the left is the existing development types map in the plan. It has two types. Type 1, which is our lower density areas in downtown in terms of development, and Type 2, which is our medium to higher density areas of downtown. What the map on the left does not do is identify those areas that are the highest density and intensity in terms of height for downtown currently under our zoning ordinance. What you see on the right, the purple areas designated north of the canal and around the medical campus in the southeast portion of downtown, those currently exist under the ordinance where if you amass enough land, almost 5 acres or 200,000 square feet, you can ask for 150 feet in height in those two areas now. But our downtown plan doesn't identify those areas as distinct from the other Type 2 areas. So what we're proposing with the update is to show this existing condition in the plan as a Type 3 area and color them purple so that it is definitely distinct not only in the plan but also aligns with what you can do now in the zoning ordinance today. Moving on, when we were looking at development types as part of the update, we have 3 areas for your consideration. 2 areas are expanded purple or Type 3 development areas, and 1 area is an expanded Type 2.5 area. And you can see those in the harder black line outline and colored on the map on the right. So why consider new 2.5 or Type 3 areas? In looking at the plan update and in talking to different people in downtown, first off, I referred to the Downtown 2.0 tourism recommendations that came out last November. It really recommended feet on the street, more residents and more employees feet on the street specifically. So in looking at that, more height could accommodate more feet on the street to support the tourism uses and the tourism recommendations that came out of the plan. So that was one consideration. We didn't want height 150 feet all over downtown, so we've been strategic in looking at where it might make the most sense from a public benefit standpoint. And so that's the second item. As you can see on the map, that those areas for your consideration to expand to include green stars that are public spaces that are being recommended as part of the public spaces master plan for downtown that the council has also been discussing for the past 2 years. So in aligning with those, if you consider not doing shorter and more horizontal buildings but doing taller buildings, you can have more public space at the ground level. So that's part of that consideration. The third consideration is from an urban design and architectural standpoint, and that's proximity to either other Type 3 areas that already exist, again, north of the canal and around the medical campus. From an urban design and architectural standpoint, you could level out that urban design so that you don't have a really much shorter building next to a taller building either across the canal or across Scottsdale Road, for example, where those 2 areas align. And then we've also heard landowner interest for additional height in downtown, and it also offers revitalization opportunities. In particular, in that 2.5 area, there's an abandoned hotel, an abandoned village inn, and some abandoned office in that area as well. So what would it mean for a new the proposed Type 2.5 would be proposed to only go to 120 feet. When we were looking at that particular area, it made sense for some additional height, but 150 seemed to be a little bit too much in that area because across the canal, it isn't a type 3 area today. It's actually lower scale townhomes adjacent to the canal at that area. So we split the difference and thought that it would be worth considering possibly additional height, but not all the way to the maximum of 150 in that area. The other two proposed type 3 areas we felt could accommodate 150 feet in those areas. So that would be the implication should you adopt any of these new areas under the zoning ordinance. In considering those areas, again, it takes an amassing of land to ask for that maximum height under the zoning ordinance. So what I'm going to quickly walk through is those three proposed areas. You can see there's two different owners here that own enough land to be able to ask for that 150 feet should this area be designated as a type 3. In the 2.5 area, we have one landowner that owns enough land that could ask for that proposed 120-foot height limit if this would be added to the downtown plan. And then finally, along with the purchase sale agreement the council recently approved for the city-owned portions, in conjunction with the private development or private land and owned in the area, 150 feet could be asked for in this particular portion of downtown should this type 3 area be added to the plan. I just want to mention, not only for council but the community, is that the zoning ordinance has setbacks and step backs that provide buffers to the height that's being proposed. So what you see on the far right of the slide is a single-family home in a neighborhood adjacent to the downtown boundary. Moving toward the left of the slide, the development has been designed under our downtown zoning ordinance requirements to show where you could get to 150 feet, and that is 350 feet away from that adjacent neighborhood. Additionally, our zoning ordinance also includes a buffer from type 1 to type 3, and we're not proposing to change these buffers in the zoning ordinance. So what you see on the left is a type 1 building at the maximum 48 feet that you can do in type 1. You're seeing the middle scale or medium scale development at 90 feet in type 2 in the middle, and then the setback and step back to the 150 feet in a proposed type 3. Moving off of the land use chapter, in character and design, the largest add in terms of updating the plan is the public spaces master plan that council's been considering for the past 2 years. And the community has been considering as well. So what that does it would incorporate that public spaces master plan into the downtown plan, which provides a home for it if you adopt it into the plan, and then that would be used really to develop these public spaces over time in downtown and the connections between them. In the mobility chapter, the biggest add is a whole focus on bicycling, which is not in the existing plan today. So goals and policies on a continuous bicycling network and infrastructure, providing education, safety, and enforcement around bicycling, and a new bikeways map. In addition, we heard from the community they wanted to see parking management and a public parking map in the plan, and those have been added as well. In terms of arts and culture, the biggest add has been in terms of text to incorporate Downtown 2.0 implementation items, not only in the implementation chapters, but also referencing those in the goals and policies of this chapter to incorporate the ideas about the events and festivals, temporary art, pocket art parks, art trail, and monumental art that we heard about in November of last year. And finally, working with Danielle's group, we've added a focus on target growth industries for economic vitality chapter, and also looking at some goals and policies on the quality of life of downtown, not just from a resident standpoint, but from an employee attraction standpoint. We are proposing to eliminate one chapter of the plan, and that's the Public Services and Facilities chapter, mostly because a lot of the goals and policies in the existing plan are redundant with others that are mostly in character and design already. So what wasn't redundant in terms of content, we moved to character and design. We also moved some of that content to the implementation program because they were very action-oriented for implementation items. And so that content that isn't redundant is still in the plan. It's just we don't need a whole chapter focused on that any longer. And then finally, we have a new robust implementation plan to take us through the next 10 years for downtown. Again, this was a multi-departmental effort to create this implementation program based on the different plans and policies the council has adopted since 2009 and based on the updates to the plan itself. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brad to go over the text amendment.
Well, before we go to that, Brad, any questions of anything that's been presented at this point in time by any of the council members? Okay, go ahead, Brad.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon to you and members of the council. As Aaron mentioned, there is a companion text amendment application that the city staff is processing to primarily implement a lot of these things that are proposed in the downtown plan, mostly on the land use front, so that we can, and regulatory front, so that we can get that character and that design that we're looking for out of the land use portion of the downtown plan. So we'll be updating the downtown district, the downtown overlay district, and the plan block development overlay district as a result of that to, again, implement those proposed changes to the downtown plan. Just a little background. Myself and Mr. Grant were here about a little over a year ago to discuss some items with regards to the zoning ordinance, primarily the bonus provisions and the cultural improvements program with you in this work study session similar to this. We got some direction from the City Council at that time to review those bonus provisions just to continue to ensure that there was an alignment with the community goals and that we were the development community was still providing meaningful benefits in exchange for that increased development potential. We also got the direction to review the cultural improvements program and make any potential changes. And finally, knowing that there could be a potential update to the downtown plan, we were given direction to align the downtown overlay and PBD districts with that new downtown plan. And that is the focus of this most recent effort. As mentioned, we'll be updating those three districts. The main change to the zoning ordinance is the addition of that type 2.5, as well as the changes in the zoning ordinance to introduce that type 3 to replace certain areas of the type 2. We also are changing some things in the zoning ordinance to create a hierarchy of development standards and unify those application of development bonuses. We've made some refinements to the public art on that section in the zoning ordinance. And as always, we always look at other parts of the zoning ordinance to maintain consistency in any changes that are necessary throughout the zoning ordinance to make sure that implementation of those three main sections do occur. So as Aaron mentioned here, this is the kind of the crux of the main changes you'll see in the zoning ordinance, that new introduction of the type 2.5. That type 2.5 will follow most of the design development standards of the type 2 district, with the exception of the application of bonus height that could be a potential. Again, if you have a 200,000 square foot or more site, there's a potential to reach 120 feet. And as Aaron showed, that location, and you can see it here again on the map, is shown in tan on that far western portion of downtown, and then within that area there was a portion that was shown in yellow that could reach that 120 foot in height. The remaining of the changes, as you can see here, is a renaming, so to speak, of some certain areas of type 2 to a type 3. None of those development standards change with this update. It's just simply a renaming to, again, match the downtown plan. In addition, we've addressed the bonus section, bonus provisions of the zoning ordinance. We've gone through an effort to consolidate and hopefully streamline the bonus development standards in a way that we can now apply those equally to not only the downtown, but also areas in the air park, and maybe even some potential areas outside of those two in the future. What you see here is there's an introduction, I should say, the calculations on how to gain additional height, additional floor area, and additional density remain the same. The cost to do so remains the same at this time. However, we have introduced an area here that will force a maximum site coverage on that bonus height, and that's in direct correspondence with some feedback we got back when we were here a little over a year ago about how far someone could cover a site with that bonus height. And so there's a calculation here. It's rather lengthy here in words, but basically what it works out to is a site is allowed to cover up to 90% for a small site of 2 acres, and as that site gets larger, it reduces the amount of coverage that is allowed by 1%. So, for instance, a site that is maybe 20 acres would be allowed to cover 70% versus the 90% of a smaller site. The goal there, again, is to limit the maximum coverage of this bonus height to ensure that it's not allowed to encroach on the entire site, but it's more focused on a smaller portion of the site. Again, as a process, the Planning Commission initiated this particular text amendment back in September of last year, along with a more comprehensive look at all the other planned districts. Again, as we identified that this plan, update to the downtown plan was going to be coming soon, we branched out this particular text amendment from that one into its own separate text amendment. We've had some reviews and updated with city commissions, including the Planning Commission most recently. And we've done a lot of public outreach. Erin showed on her slides a lot of that public outreach. Those didn't always coincide with the text amendment outreach, but they did converge on a number of open houses a month or two ago. And again, the Planning Commission has recommended this to city. Well, consider this a recommendation to City Council next week, and then finally City Council action in
Excuse me,
July.
1 second, and I didn't want to interrupt that stream of thought there, Brad. So,
Sure.
But if I might, I think I may have just missed it, but I just want some clarification as to what it goes back to the slide with regard to the bonus height issues, and the maximum site coverage starts at 90% for 2 acres or less, then reduces proportionally for every acre increase. I think you cited an example, but I just was wondering how that maxes out. Reduces proportionally, does that mean to say that on the basis of 10%? Or exactly how does that translate beyond 2 acres?
Sure, absolutely, Mayor.
If I have 90% coverage on 2 acres, if I have 3 acres,
you would have 89% coverage.
okay, so 1%.
Right. It's a 1-to-1 proportion.
And so for every additional acre, it's 1%?
Yes.
Is there a top end?
Yes, you can go no further than 30%.
Okay, and I think that's the example you gave.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
I should have.
No, that's quite all right.
And again, oops, sorry about that. Moving a little bit too far forward here. The next steps, as we mentioned here, is Planning Commission hearing June 13th, and then an adoption hearing, potential adoption hearing with City Council on July 2nd. That concludes our presentation. Again, we're happy to begin the discussion with you on anything you have here.
Well, thank you, Brad. Thank you, Aaron. Do we have any questions from the council members on this? Yes, Councilman Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Aaron, I guess a lot of what you're talking about doing is bringing this downtown plan or Old Town Scottsdale character area plan into a compliance with the Plan 2.0. Was that presented to council? Did we approve that, or did we look at it?
Mayor and Council, to my knowledge, you only saw it in a work study session.
And regarding the other plan, the plan for public spaces, is that the same thing? Did we approve something or just look at it?
you looked at it. And so with both of those, we are taking pieces that we heard based on those work study sessions and incorporating them into this plan so that they find a home for you to consider adoption of some of those elements of both of those plans.
Well, then I'll give an opinion. I mean, first of all, I think some of the sections that you're changing for, to give greater recognition to bicycling and arts and culture and even perhaps the economic development piece, I'm fine with that, but I think I'm stuck back on the land use mixture or the pretty pictures that you drew that have 3 new areas that qualify for the either type 3 or type 2.5 development. And I would say that so there you have it on the screen. The southernmost part, the one with the star on it, I think we all know what that site is, and we're currently in negotiations with the land buyer to provide meaningful open space and whatever in return for the 150-foot potential height, maybe less than that. But the other areas, we don't have a plan, we don't have negotiations, we don't really have anything. And I think my reaction is that if I approve those other areas, I am giving away what might be a strategic bargaining tool with a new developer. I can envision a situation where a new developer might come to us and say, I'd love to do something on what we call the Rose Garden property, the tan area there. And he might say, I would love to go up to 120 feet. And at that point, we could say, well, I might grant you that. What's in it for my citizens? What is in it for my client? But if I've already written this down as being an allowed use, I don't have that as a bargaining tool. So I am reluctant to approve these for areas where I have not yet met with a developer or bargained with them for what they want to do and what concessions they need. I would point out just mathematically for the new purple areas up there that we don't yet have a development plan that anyone's talking about, you would be going from the potential of 90 feet to a potential of 150 feet. Is that right?
That's correct.
And that's a 66% increase in height. I mean, ignoring the fact that it's an enormously tall building, that's a 66% increase in height. And I guess I visualized that I could get something bargaining with that as a chip if I'm sitting across the table. And if we memorialize this, I've lost that bargaining chip. The reason I asked the question of whether we have approved the Downtown Plan 2.0 or the Public Spaces Plan is because I think we may be getting the cart before the horse here. Until we have approved those plans, I don't want to change the character area plan to conform to them. And maybe as a group, if we were voting on it, maybe we would have a lot of issues with the Downtown Plan 2.0, but to just, well, I'll leave it at that and see what other people have to say, but bottom line, I would be in favor of doing what we call the La Loma site, since that's consistent with current negotiations, but the others I would not. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Aaron, obviously for everyone's benefit, this is a work study, so this is where we would consider, if there are changes that the council agrees to make as a group, a consensus. It would be a pushback for another run at this. I know that we've gone through a number of processes with work studies, and we have looked at this, and this is the product of the direction that you perceived, and frankly, I think that we directed in what we see before us. Just for my own clarity, and maybe for everyone else's, the type 2.5, where you do have the star, my understanding is we're already talking about that's a bonus situation if it were to go to 120 feet. And it's specifically indicated with the star for that option in that area that's away from the canal front. because even though that's available, it's not really available in that. Now, that's by some design within the code as we're going to interpret it, or no? Yes,
Yes.
and that would be the slide. My understanding from the slide, I suppose, is that the star indicates that somewhere in that area there is an option for 120 feet.
So Mayor Lane and Council, the star indicates that the public spaces master plan identifies wanting public space somewhere in that area. So in doing that, when you consider a taller height of a building, you get more public space at the ground levels because the building is taller and leaner and not as horizontal. So you have more public space and potentially more public realm and connections. So that's what the star is. The triangle piece that's proposed for type 2.5 actually does not include the Rose Garden site. That's just on the north side of Fifth Avenue, and the triangle piece is on the south side of Fifth Avenue.
Adjacent to the canal.
So it does not include that city property at this time.
Okay.
In addition, if these areas were included in the downtown plan and someone came in to ask for that bonus height, there are bonuses provisions in the zoning ordinance that we have worked with on other projects in downtown already with essentially type 2 or type 3, that they provide public benefits. It could be that public space that's identified. It could be other public benefits that council deems appropriate for that area.
I guess what I was trying to say is that we have provisions within this to negotiate on the basis of a bonus situation if it were in type 2.5 to go to 120 feet.
That's correct.
And what you've added to that component is the star requires that one of those provisions may be part of the bonus situation be for that open space.
That's correct.
Okay. Yes, Councilwoman Court.
Thank you, Mayor. Aaron, can you speak to, if you go back to thank you, right there. If you go back, so can you speak to the northern sector, violet, purple areas, and why that is type 3?
Mayor and Council, northern sector meaning north of the canal? Okay.
North, but also the entertainment district that's to the east of the canal.
So we have two separate things going on with type 3. One, we want to show existing quote unquote type 3 now, where you can do 150 feet today under the downtown zoning ordinance. And that exists currently in the ordinance north of the canal and around the medical campus. Unfortunately, that 150-foot height happened after 2009 when the downtown plan was approved. So we never went back and adjusted to show that really north of the canal and around the medical campus operates different than other type 2 areas in downtown. So right now they just show as blue or type 2, but they really operate as purple type 3s under the zoning ordinance today. So those two are just to show existing conditions under the ordinance today. The purple areas that have the dark black line around them are proposed new type 3 areas for council to consider. And in the case of the entertainment district and just south of the canal and west of Scottsdale Road, a lot of that was to align with the public spaces master plan, where there is quite a bit of, as you can see, a number of stars in that area showing where we want a number of different public spaces to be developed over the next 10 years in downtown. And so some of those are in that entertainment area. In addition, across the canal, we already have type 3, so it's not, across or adjacent to single family in that particular area west of Scottsdale Road. North of Camelback is the only place where the type 3 is across from single family residential. But it's really sort of one lot in, because those lots that face Camelback are SR zoned and have gone to, they look like homes, but they're have small businesses operating out of them. So just behind that one lot is a single family development. Again, we showed that from that downtown boundary, there's built-in setbacks and stepbacks to help kind of buffer that height area. So you couldn't develop that height right adjacent to Camelback. You would have to be about 350 feet in before you could get up to that 150-foot height level in the entertainment district.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Yes, Councilwoman Clapp?
I have a question as to when you now refer to Civic Center Mall, it's now Civic Center. What's the boundaries of that Civic Center that you're referring to in the plan?
So you can see it. I can't see. It's just west of the red that you can see. The red on the district map is historic Old Town, and then it's sort of a lime green, yellowish. Just west of there are the Civic Center boundary, which aligns with what the tourism documents are also designating as the Civic Center boundary.
Okay, so you're calling Civic Center all the way down to Osborne, which would include the stadium.
Yes.
Okay, that was my question, because I had read in the character and design that you would promote the Civic Center, Canal, and Museum of the West as public open spaces for events. And my thought was, well, you didn't include the stadium in that, but if you're considering that part of Civic Center, then it's addressed. Is that what you're saying?
It would be from a district standpoint. We could also add that language into the plan as well.
I'm thinking it might be nice just to add the stadium, because it is being identified as a opportunity for more public events.
That's a great point.
Yeah. And then the other comment I have to make about the things I read in the various sections of the plan, and I know you've addressed them here and there, and maybe there's more in the implementation section, but I would like to see as much as possible emphasis on shade and trees. And, you know, like, for example, there's one section that says that art will be required, public art will be required on private development, and I would like to see a line that says trees are required as well somehow in that verbiage. And the reason I bring that up is that we had a actually really excellent meeting this last week between the Planning Commission and the DRB, and we discussed a variety of issues that that are important between the two bodies. But at the end of the meeting, we went through projects that have been developed, and with a lot of slides. And there was a lot of comment from the people in both bodies that said, probably more than anything else, where's the trees? That the projects are done and there's no trees. Why don't they plant trees? And so unless we emphasize tree planting, it isn't going to happen. And so I'd like to see, if possible, as much incorporation of trees. You mentioned shade structures, which is good, and I think those are necessary too, but trees help soften the look of architecture. And what has happened apparently on certain parts of Scottsdale Road where we actually put in trees is that the trees are now gone. Somebody's removed them because they didn't like the fact that it might block their sign on the front of their building. And so I think we need to address the fact that we want trees along these various streets, and particularly in areas where we've actually planted them ourselves. If a business has removed them, and it's hard to pinpoint who removed them, but still we need to emphasize that we want trees along particularly Scottsdale Road, but a lot of the other roads that will help soften the look of architecture as well as provide shade. And another reason for that is just in the last couple of weeks, I met with a group of visitors down at Experience Scottsdale, and they came from a desert climate in the Middle East, right? So they had to walk a couple of blocks to the Galleria. And the comment they made when they got there is, you got a great downtown, but where's your trees? There's no shade. You don't have any shade anywhere. And it was a hot day. And so they immediately recognized that there's not enough emphasis on trees in our downtown area. And so I think it's just important that we keep that in mind when we're doing an implementation, as well as incorporating that language throughout, that shade is just as important as public art, it's just as important as some other things that are incorporated into the plan. And I don't know how you do that. I'd leave that up to you to figure out where you need to place those emphasis on trees and shade, but I think it just needs to be incorporated throughout the document.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. To that point, and I was just looking through some of the implementation issues on the streetscapes and that, there is some specific reference to not only shade structures but also trees in that implementation. But it does go to the idea that if we put them in and then they are cut down, I'm not sure what control mechanism we might have for that, but I certainly would be an advocate of making sure that in that implementation and in the development of that cost, that we have some protection, even in planning them, maybe with some consideration for what it might impact. But there's got to be some way to protect that element, I think, as well. And I don't know exactly whether that fits into this, but it may fit into the code in protecting assets that we paid for. I had one question with regard to, and this is under the economic vitality, and it's item 44 in the implementation side of things. And I just wanted to ask on this just from the standpoint of definition, because I'm not sure exactly how this gets translated in the public's mind and, frankly, in the implementation of it. And it says a creative class growth, creation of a program such as technical assistance, fee offset, or matching grant to aid in the growth and location of creative class businesses and retailers in Old Town. It does go with a sort of an all-encompassing and retailers, but is there some distinction and is there some definition for a creative class business that might be open to then some additional subsidies, or how do we see that happening?
Mayor and Council, that was actually provided to us by Economic Development, so I will get with Danielle and get an answer for you when we bring this back to you with regard to how that could be implemented.
I mean, I think we've got a general idea, but when you get down to doing something about it, a definition probably would be in order.
Okay.
The undergrounding of utilities, I don't know what our program is currently with that. And I noticed that this says ongoing as far as the undergrounding of utilities and continue to underground utilities. Is that always just in concert with a specific properties development? Because sometimes that's a difficult thing to accomplish if you get to a point of, unless they amass a number of lots or otherwise. Is there some program or thinking as to how we might be able to facilitate as things happen, moving that, particularly in some of these commercial areas in downtown and the transitional areas, even the Garden District and that, whether there's not some furtherance we can move in that direction?
So Mayor and Council, we've done both. We've worked with the private sector to underground, but at times where there's been a priority for the city, like the Canal Bank development in Reading, the Canal Bank development to have the waterfront and South Bridge and everything that we now have today. Some of the hidden infrastructure that's gone on as the city actually paid for with some of our credits with SRP to underground those KV lines that were along the Canal Bank. So we have done both over time in downtown. I think currently mostly we've been targeting just working with the private sector to do that at this point.
Well, probably everybody remembers the downtown, rather the undergrounding of the Canal Bank that came under, trying to remember the name of the project before it. It's currently with Triard and the hotel that's there and the substation. But it became so burdensome, and of course with the downturn, it sort of collapsed. But it was a tremendous opportunity to be able to do an awful lot of it along both sides of that area. But so both are employed, and obviously the economic conditions have something to do with whether there's actually a play for it. You know, one example that we have, and it's not in downtown or in Old Town, but up in the air park where we put together a district, and it was quite a bit of work to get that done, but it did get accomplished, and I think to everybody's benefit up there. There's already a number of lines that are already up. We didn't underground something that existed, but making sure as it came in new in that case. always for restrooms. I notice that's a few years out, but I'm not sure that that's something that could be ongoing almost at this point. Yes, Councilwoman Cordy.
Thank you, Mayor. So I figure I'll tell you what I like. I like this new character area plan. I think it updates to the present, to what we're doing today and what we envision for our old town. I particularly like historic old town delineated so that, and the restrictions, the real hard restrictions that are placed on historic old town, maintaining its western flair and boardwalks and low buildings, and I think that's really strong. I like the fact that we've dropped Civic Center, Plaza, or whatever we've called it, or mall. We've toyed with the idea of just changing it all together, but what a simple solution is just called Civic Center. Really simple, so thank you for that. I also like the entertainment district. We've talked about identifying and defining that area as an entertainment district, and everyone's referred to it as an entertainment district. And, well, gosh, now we have an entertainment district. And I think that's important as we move forward to, as that area transitions with time and identify those specific needs and restrictions within that area. And of course, the medical district, it is Honor Health that is such an important economic driver of our downtown, and that whole medical use is huge for our downtown. So I'm glad to see that. My question, I do have a question on the downtown core boundary. Can you give me a reason for that?
Mayor Lena and members of council, it currently exists in the plan today, and the downtown core boundary is just to identify that type 1 area, which is the lowest density and height for development. So it aligns with the downtown core language in the zoning ordinance. And so historic Old Town, you can build up to only 40 feet in that area under the ordinance, and then the remaining portions of the downtown core, you can build up to 48 feet in that area.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I've got to say, on top of everything, incidentally, I think the way it's been presented is succinct and really to the point, and I think it's been very, very clear, and I very much appreciate that. But a special reference to the graphic illustrations of the downtown development transition from Type 1, Type 2, and Type 3 really speaks volumes as they talk about a picture presenting 1,000 words or replacing 1,000 words, and the other is that from the Type 3 through the transition to the border side of it. It's not only an excellent illustration, but it really does a nice job of it all the way around. Yes, Councilman Smith.
First of all, I'll add some of the accolades that others have made. I think it's a good update, and there are many good features in here. If I may, I want to circle back to a comment that was made on the proposed development types. And in particular, tell me in what we call the entertainment district or the canal district to the south there, before you colored it purple, what could a developer do there?
So before it was colored purple, it was blue in Type 2 under the downtown plan and the zoning ordinance. If you have up to 200,000 square feet or more, you could ask for 90 feet in height.
And so I thought, with regard to the little brown area there, which I mistakenly called the Rose Garden, but is really south of the Rose Garden, what could a developer do there today without some special dispensation?
Again, if they have 200,000 square feet or more, they could ask for 90 feet in height for development.
Would there be any way for them to get to 120?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. I thought I was hearing that somehow this was doing what they could already do. So I will repeat my comment for what it's worth. I think adding these areas, the brown area, which call it whatever you will, that can now go to 90 feet, or I'm sorry, 120 feet, and the south of the canal as well as the entertainment district. I mean, I feel like we're giving something away, and we haven't even sat down at the negotiating table. We've said you used to be able to go to only 90 feet, but even though I don't know who you are or what you're going to do or what you propose to build, I'm going to give you permission to go to 120. And similarly, in the entertainment district, even though I don't know who you are, what you want to do, or where you're going to build, you used to be limited to 90 feet. I'm going to let you go to 150. I just don't understand why we would want to give away a negotiating advantage in advance of having a negotiation. So that's, again, why I would favor the Loma site improvements, but not the others. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, Councilwoman Milhaven.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a bit of a follow-up. So could you explain what the process would be if this gets approved and there's areas that now have permission for additional height? Could you explain sort of what the process would be for for a property owner to actually build to that new height?
Sure. Mayor and Council, similar to what they would have to do to ask for the 90 feet today, they would have to have a development plan that they came in for. They would be, depending on what their zoning is, potentially rezoning. If these are developed, it just means they can come in and make the ask. As part of that process, you would be looking at what public benefits you would like if you're considering allowing them to go to the 150 feet that they're asking for. So it's very similar to what you've done on other projects, whether it's Scottsdale Fashion Square north of the canal or 90 feet projects that have been done in the entertainment district and in other areas of downtown with regard to residential and office that you have recently approved.
So it wouldn't be automatically entitled to that additional, there would be a zoning case that would come forward, and so with where Councilman Smith's worried about, we might want to negotiate from additional things, we'd still have that opportunity as part of the zoning case.
That's correct.
As we do today.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me just add a little bit to that, and I think that is a good clarification on this. One of the things we tried to do in a couple of work studies ago when we said let's define what the process would be in calculating what bonus situations and on what basis was to get away from the one-off issues that were occurring, which created a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace and for us and otherwise. So I'm certainly favor the condition that you've drawn up and that you're suggesting here today with regard to defining that, codifying it as well, and as well as defining those conditions or those issues of open space and those other things that may be part of that determination. Yes, Councilwoman Littlefield.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I kind of looked at this as an opportunity to go through it in some detail and basically say what I didn't like. But before I do that, I'd like to say what I do like about this. I like looking at this entire area as one unified piece that should all fit together and blend together. I think one of the biggest problems Scottsdale's had in the past is we've piecemealed too many properties and they don't match. And then I think that this is an opportunity and an attempt to fix that problem. And I think it's very well done. Obviously, a lot of work has gone into this, and I thank you for that. So I'm going to just kind of start in and say what I want to say about a number of different areas here. I'd also like to say I did receive this afternoon a letter from the COGS, and many of the things that they have put in here I agree with. Especially I like, as the mayor said, we need to identify a specific value for awarding bonuses so that everybody knows the same platform is the same for everybody, and we need to be able to base and balance any increases in height and density against a public benefit and make sure that they they are equal and that they do come out in an advantage to the public. So that's one thing I do like on this particularly. I do like the entertainment district having an officially identified boundary. And then one of the things I don't want to see is an entertainment district such as we have to the south of Scottsdale Road come and join us in the north. I do not want that, and that is non-negotiable as far as I'm concerned. That is something we don't want to spread around. I do like the idea of just calling it Civic Center, like they said. That I think that makes a lot of sense. And some of the other things in here, I'm sure you got that letter, so I'm just going to leave it for you. But I wanted to identify those things I particularly liked. One of my main concerns is the request for more height and density. I know that the smaller hotel that's having to drop some of its original requested height because of construction restrictions, it looks to me that that's reasonable to replace that benefit that the developer would have somewhere else. But I think we've added too much height to do it, and we've kind of gone beyond the equality of it. I'm okay with La Loma. I think that's okay. That's fine. I'm concerned about the new category of 2.5 to 120 feet from 90 feet, just because it's a new category. I'm not sure that that makes a lot of sense. The hotels along the canal would go from 90 feet currently to 150 feet, and we all know if they could, they would. And again, that's a lot of height that we're giving away to people, and we don't know what the benefit is even going to be if we say yes. And so that, I don't like saying, yeah, you can have that if you just give us something, because I think, again, you have to identify what is the value, what is it that you want in order to do something like that. According to the paperwork that I read over and that we went over together in our meeting, there's an additional 87 acres that automatically would be allowed to go up to 150 feet, type 3 in height, and more than 10 acres to go up to the 2.5 or 120 feet. That's a total of 312 acres in the downtown that can automatically go up a lot, other than what we have today. And I think that's an overindulgence in height. It's a lot of land. I don't like the changes that automatically higher height allowances in so many places, and we don't know what the financial compensation or anything like that is. I think using additional height compensation by step-backs and open space is fine, but that's not part of the public benefit that the public should get. That's what we should require as a city. And I think, basically leave it as it is and make them come to us and make them want it. We give away too much. I don't want, as I said, the bar and entertainment district across Scottsdale Road to morph into Old Town or downtown, and I don't want a second bar district. I would like to see the strongest language possible be incorporated to keep that from happening, and to me this is non-negotiable. I just don't want that. If we can zone higher and denser, we can zone for no bar district, and putting some hard and fast technology and terminology into this to make it firm and non-negotiable. And I think if we can create zoning that prohibits this, that would be good. So that's a possibility. I'd like to know how much discussion there's been with the neighbors that abut this area, especially to the south and then also to the north, in the single-family homes and homes that are going to be affected by this. And I want to know if they're all okay with it. So that's something that I'd like you to come back and let us know what their comments were, both positive and negative, and how that works. I'd like to also address the bike issue that's in this plan. There's a great deal of it, I notice, a whole section on page 37, and it's 7 point, et cetera. I think that this is something that we're getting the cart before the horse when we're putting all of these things in the plan before the council has even seen the ordinance that the staff is going to be coming back with on what is going to be allowed or not allowed with the bikes. And I'm talking about the rental bikes. We haven't reviewed it. We don't know what's in it yet. Regarding the regulations or what we're going to allow or not allow, and it should not go into a downtown plan until we know the specific agreements that we're going to have with the bike companies and what we're going to allow in downtown. We haven't set up the rules. Are we going to allow a docking system or force a docking system or not? We haven't decided. It hasn't come back to us. If we do, that's going to affect this plan, and it shouldn't be in there until we know what we're talking about. Where can the bikes be left? Where can they be picked up? What fines or penalties are instituted? What about the scooters? We haven't addressed that. Is that going to fall into the bike category also? All the citizen complaints that we've received over the last few months on the bikes, which we've all gotten, and I'm sure staff has gotten too, they need to be addressed, and they need to be publicly addressed and not just folded into this plan and hope that everybody goes away. Are we getting, all we're getting is that we are in discussions with other cities, but other cities are doing different things. So we need to make a decision and get that back in front of council before we put that in this plan. That would be something ahead of this that should happen.
Excuse me, I don't want to interrupt too very much, but one of the things that we're not here really to discuss the codification or whatever agreements we might have with bikes or otherwise. And I don't think this master plan is meant to start to set in place laws to either restrict, either to outlaw, or to legalize any of these things. Those are a separate discussion.
Well, if it's in the plan, it's there. And I read in this plan, we are considering setting up a policy in the plan for lockers and shower facilities for bikers. Really? How about the homeless who might want to use them? Is that okay? Are we going to have someone there to make sure only bikers use the showers? We don't even have public restrooms that are ADA compliant, but we can afford this? I don't think so. I have an idea. We have, I'll come back to that idea. It's further on. I've received word from the Parada del Sol folks that they were denied the use of the Cavalier Blacksmith Shop because there's no restroom nearby. Why couldn't we afford to build a restroom where we can put showers for bikers and a toilet so they don't have to use a drain? If we can afford shower facilities, we can afford a restroom in downtown and have it ADA compliant and go from there. But I don't think that it's appropriate to have that kind of a facility in our downtown in general. As a response, one of the things that was listed in this plan and spoken of in this plan was where the New West meets the Old West. And what does that mean exactly? How are we going to be doing that? Old West is going to, if it's not going to be in the old buildings of the west of the old downtown, what are we going to do to make the Old West meet the new? It doesn't mean anything. The Old West is more than pictures and art galleries and art exhibits in the museum. Those are nice and they're beautiful, but that's not meeting anything. So I need to have a definition of what some of these terms are. As far as I can see, they don't mean anything. And I'd like to know what it is that you have in mind to make those kinds of things happen. We're hoping that this obviously brings more people to downtown to visit and spend money and enjoy our area. This translates to more parking requirements, to my mind. Can we think about where we could put in another parking garage, possibly in the back of the Sagebrush Theater, since that's going to be able to be kept there. That would be, the back of that parking lot needs to be redone, surfaced anyway. Perhaps we could use some of the money that we're getting from this and put in a parking garage with maybe 3 stories with a rooftop level, so that we can address some of that, and then put our trolley system to connect to that, so that we can have transportation throughout and have people be able to pick it up and go quickly. Public art, I had a comment about it. I noticed a lot of public art is spoken of in this, that we want to have public art, that we want to improve it and have many little pocket parks with art and sculptures and all this, which I'm totally fine with. I think that's great, and we need it. But I also would like to make a recommendation to reinstate the policy of public open meetings and public comments on design and development of projects throughout the public area, especially in the pocket parks and some of those things. It's a way to bring public support to our arts effort, which has been a little bit on the decrease lately. And I think that it was often used many years ago when we had open houses down in the public squares, and they had pictures and examples and things of public art that people could go and comment on and make written comments on. And it was extremely effective. I think that's something that we could reinstate and use that as not only getting some very good ideas from our very talented public, but also bringing public support for our arts efforts, and perhaps making that a happier situation in all of our downtown. So that's part of what I had. I do have a couple of other little things. I noticed that the idea of artist in residence has come back in this. I thought that the council had voted not to do that or to support that under council monies, so I would like to see that not be in there. The artist in residence supported by the city is not something I want to see in downtown. You had in here, we were looking to put in new festivals, about 4 a year in this area, and possibly making the public space areas available for some of that. I'd like more information on what kind of festivals you're thinking about putting in and what they would be, when they would be. I take it they would be shoulder activities on the frame of the timing and the calendar year, but I would like to know what that is. There was some concern that I heard from people about Scottsdale Road, and by increasing the pedestrian area, decreasing the roadway, and decreasing the number of lanes. Again, I heard we weren't going to do that, but I would like that in writing, that Scottsdale Road is not going to lose any traffic lanes. Again, I had 150 feet only in the Loma district. That would be my preference. Not along south of Main Street at all. That should not happen. So we need to keep Old Town, Main Street, Old Town, and all of that area, and not let it lose its character. And we had a term in here, celebration of fine arts. I would like to know, was that a general term, or were we talking about the business celebration of fine arts? And is that going to be part of this downtown permanently? Is that something that you want, or is this just the general term that we're celebrating fine arts? So I'd like to know. That's basically about it for the moment anyway. And again, I'd like to thank you again. You did a good job on a lot of this stuff. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Councilwoman. I am, yes, I'll go ahead, Councilman Phillips. Well, I was just going to say that, number one, anything that has been discussed individually, we'll have to determine as a consensus whether they are complied with or not. So, I mean, whether we, even I suppose to a definition, but one of the things I asked. But so I just want to make sure that when we talk about these kinds of things, that certainly the directions to be given, but it is to be given by consensus. Yes, Councilman Phillips.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm just wondering where we're at with this, what the next steps are going to be.
Okay, Mayor and Council, next steps, our Planning Commission would hear this as a recommendation hearing on June 13th. We actually have been with them in 3 study sessions already, and some of the items we've heard today we've talked through with them, and some of them we have incorporated their direction into the draft that you have in your hands this evening. And then from there, this would come back for council consideration on July 2nd. It's currently scheduled.
So we're all done as far as public input and the merchants and all that?
We continue to collect public input all the way up to the council meeting, and if we can address that, we would then present the differences from the plan that you have in front of you today.
So public and the merchants can submit it to you, is what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the concerns I got from some people are basically what Councilwoman Littlefield brought up. The policy M 7.1, incorporate accessible bicycle infrastructure and facilities into public and private developments such as designated bicycle parking areas, racks, lockers, and shower facilities. Yeah, I wouldn't be part of that either. If a private company wants to open his business up and make I don't even know showers for the bikes or the people on the bikes or both of them together or what they're talking about, but I don't think that's something the city should be doing. The other one was foster public-private partnerships to continue artist in residence programs. If I believe so, I think in the past the council pretty much agreed that we weren't going to be doing that. Another point was made that on page 1346 of the new Old Town Scottsdale, south of Main Street, the Museum Square, is there a way we could point out or let me know if it does not affect Main Street itself? Because they're worried that you're going to allow Main Street to be able to go to that height also. And I know that wasn't the intention, but since it's not specifically spelled out unless there's a border or boundary area.
Mayor Lane and members of council, the Main Street area, both on the south side and the north side of Main Street, is type 1 designated today, and we're not proposing to change that. So south of there is where the type 3 proposed area would occur. And again, that transition that you saw in terms of the graphic from type 1 to type 3 would also need to be applied when looking at development in that area.
Okay. And then the last one, the one page 3, changing the words focus on into celebration of. They have the concern that celebration of sounds like celebration of fine art. So we might be able to want to look at a different term.
So Mayor and Council, maybe I can clear up some of those. We heard some of those things from the community prior to going to a Planning Commission study session. So with regard to the celebration language, we retain the existing language which says focus on. So the plan that you have in front of you this evening doesn't say that any longer. I'll go through a couple of things. In terms of the bike issue, there is one new thing that was added with regard to educating people how to use bike share. We could certainly take that out if it's too specific of language with regard to bike share. That is new. The majority of the other biking is really focused on what we do today for biking for our residents and also our biking commuters. So those showers and lockers aren't intended to be public showers or lockers that are provided, but for example, city facilities have showers and lockers in them, meaning city offices for the office workers that are actually bicycle commuters. So it's encouraging private sector to do that in terms of offices and other employers to do that for their employees that choose to be a bicycle commuter. So it's not really intended to be like a public restroom in downtown.
Maybe we could just clarify that a little better.
And we'll try and do that. We also have that in the zoning ordinance where we encourage some of those lockers and bicycle showers to be provided on site as well through the development process. So that's we'll try and adjust that so it's not as confusing. In terms of the New West meets the Old West, that actually came out of the previous 2009 downtown plan process. We actually held a downtown town hall, and that was one of the big quotes that came from one of the citizens that participated in that. And so at that time, being witness to some of that town hall and what went on at that time. It was really an intention to kind of preserve the historic old town that we have today, but also look at developing new things that still kind of touch on our Western spirit in Scottsdale. So Scottsdale Museum of the West, I think those citizens back then that participated that would consider that the New West, if that helps give an example to some of the discussion that went on. So that's existing language in the plan that we've had since 2009. With regard to the public art, we can certainly look at adding language with regard to making that, a public process, and we don't have language today in there, so that's a good suggestion. I believe the artist in residence was existing language prior to the 2.0, but I know you did have the 2.0 discussion, so we could certainly look at deleting that if that's the consensus of council. In Scottsdale Road came up before a planning commission study session as well, so we do have in the language in the implementation item specifically that says transform Scottsdale Road. We went back in and did put the language in there that does say that we would retain the existing lanes that are on Scottsdale Road today, so we have addressed that in the plan that you have in front of you. And I think I already talked about the celebration of fine arts. So I think we tried to accommodate that, and we did hear some of those same statements from the Planning Commission that also heard from the public.
Thank you.
Aaron, I suppose we've been through a couple of sessions where we've given some guidance, and I think in defense of what we have here in front of us, not that it needs defending necessarily, but I think it does fairly closely reflect what the consensus of opinion and the direction has been. So for that, I appreciate that. And I will say that with minor exceptions and maybe some of the things that you just enumerated, I think it's a very good product, and it represents and reflects and shows what we have been talking about for the last couple of work studies before this. And so I would be looking from the council here for a consensus of opinion with regard to what's in front of us here. Now, we don't take action, but we do take, we can accept a motion to accept or to accept with modifications. And I would ask the council members to consider that at any time that they choose to do so. If they want to make a motion with all of the exceptions that they have, and we can put it down, or if they can, if they want to isolate on the things that they think might be helpful for all of us. Yes, Councilman Smith.
Well, I'm not going to make a big list, but I think I would like to make a motion as far as the proposed development types. My recommendation would be that we approve it on what we call the La Loma site, but that we not approve it on any other site where we do not have a development plan that we're looking at, which is to say the entertainment area, the south of the canal, or the area 2.5. I know that we've made the statement that nothing's done until we approve it, but I don't know that we've ever had somebody come to us with a bonus provision and say, I want to do this up to 150 feet, and we say, no, you can't do that. So I say again, I think we're giving away a bargaining chip in advance, and my motion would be to approve for this only the La Loma site.
Mayor Lane and council members, if I could clarify with Councilman Smith, are you okay with showing the type 3 on the existing areas that already operate that way under the zoning ordinance?
Yes, you're talking about the medical center and yes.
That's correct. Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to interject this point for the record and for clarification that any motions that are made here, or even the motion to accept something, are not binding. Because it's a work study session, it's just direction to staff, so they'll have some idea of what they should be bringing back, but the final action won't be taken until July 2nd. Thank you.
I appreciate that clarification, but I think we're pretty much in tune with that, but I do appreciate that said for the public's benefit as well as anything else. This is always for guidance, and it is a matter that it would come back and we could change our mind again. So, I would prefer we sort of got to some settled business in this third round of this, but nevertheless, that's where it's at. So the motion's on the table. Yes, Councilwoman Littlefield.
Thank you. I would agree with Councilman Smith's ideas and guidance, as long as we also incorporate, and if that's all right with you, some of the definitions and language that changes that we already talked about as a council. Thank you.
All right, the motion's been made and seconded. Any further comment by anyone? Then I would ask if all those in favor, please indicate by aye. Motion's been made. Any of those opposed with a nay? Nay. Okay, the motion fails. Do I have another motion? Yes, Councilman Phillips.
I just feel weird making a motion. I'd rather say I would recommend that we move forward with staff's presentation and some of the guidance that we've given them along the way.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion's made and second. Any further comments on that? Yes, Councilwoman.
I'm saying take into consideration comments that were made.
Because I don't agree with all the comments that were made. I'm
Yeah,
okay
and
with
I-
the plan the way
and I
it is
totally
now.
understand
If
that.
folks want to ask staff to make additional changes, I'd like us to be really specific about what those changes were. So,
Right, but like they said, it's not over yet, so this is just to let staff go forward with it till the next time they come back to us.
well, like, for example, excluding the artists in residence, that Councilwoman Littlefield, I would not support that. That's aspirational. The plan doesn't say who's going to pay for it, but I think it's a fun idea to explore in the future. So I wouldn't want to intentionally leave that out. So I'm okay with the plan the way it is and am supportive of it. If you want to suggest, I'm just saying, I won't support it the way you said it because it sounds like we're including things based on comments that were already made that I may or may not agree with. So if there's specific things, changes you'd like to see made based on the discussion, I'd like us to consider those individually. Does that make sense?
So let me say, I recommend moving forward with staff's recommendations.
Thank you.
Motion's been then made and seconded. Unless there's any further comment, then we're ready then for a vote. All those in favor, please indicate by aye. Aye. Those opposed with a nay? Okay. Now, again, certainly for the record, we'll say again, this is for guidance and what we move forward with, but I think it's clear. And certainly there will be an occasion, if in fact there's at a point of vote, so some things could be eliminated or added. All right. I'm presuming that then completes our business at hand this evening, this afternoon yet? Yes, Councilman.
If I may, I think we have mayor-council opportunity here, and if I'm reading it right.
Yes.
I would like to propose that we have staff come back to us with a presentation, not this staff, but that staff back there, come back to us with a presentation on the fine art tax elimination that we discussed and approved in a work study session, I think almost a year ago. So I'd like to have staff just come back to us and tell us where that stands, what has been done, what needs to be done, and where we go from here. And maybe we can do that on June 12 or June 19 or whatever.
All right, motion's been made to agendize a conversation with the staff with regard to that particular item.
I'll second that.
All right, motion's been made and second. All those in
Your
favor?
Honor?
Yes.
Would you have any problem with us doing this on July 3rd? That's the next meeting that's really got the space.
Okay. Can we then stipulate, is that all right with you? It's July 3rd?
It's going to break my heart, but I'll do
I
it.
understand.
Thank
All right,
you.
yes. So in any case, the motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, please indicate by aye. Aye. Motion passes. And so that will be agendized for July 3rd. And now, I believe now we are complete with our business here. And thank everyone for their participation. And thank you to staff for what you've done.
Sure.